Okay, so you sent this over. It's these lessons from sglleadership.com. And wow,
Yeah.
this looks like something you're really digging into, all about how to connect with people better,
Hmm.
especially in a professional setting, like I guess networking and stuff like that.
Right.
And that is what we are going to deep dive into today. So we're going to really try to understand this SGL method and how it can create genuine connections.
Okay.
And all based on these excerpts from the website that you sent over.
Yeah.
One of the things that really jumped out at me from the start was this idea that
Yeah.
to really connect with people, you got to go beyond just the surface.
Exactly.
It's not just about handing out your business card or your
Your elevator pitch.
yeah, your little elevator pitch, right?
Totally.
It's more about sharing something deeper,
Yeah.
something more personal.
Absolutely. And I think what's so fascinating about the SGL framework
Okay.
is that it kind of breaks down how we communicate into these three different languages.
Okay.
They have this blue language, which is like your facts, so your who, what, where, when.
Right.
Then they have this red language, which is more about energy and relationships. What are
Yeah.
you passionate about? Who are you connected to?
Interesting.
And then the yellow language, which is all about your values.
Oh, okay, value. So
Almost like connecting with your soul or your core beliefs. And so the idea is that if you can move beyond just the facts, just the blue information,
right.
and start to actually touch on what energizes you and what really matters to you, that's how you can unlock these real connections.
That makes sense. I mean, if you're just talking about your job title,
Yeah.
where you went to school.
Boring.
Yeah, you're not really
Nobody cares.
Yeah, nobody really cares. You're not making a connection.
Yeah.
So let's dive into a really interesting example
Yeah.
that the source actually provides.
Yeah.
It's about this leadership conference in Norway.
Okay, cool.
So picture this, right? It's a really luxurious setting.
Fancy.
Super fancy, very prestigious.
Uh-huh.
All these attendees from the worlds of tech and finance.
Big wigs.
Yeah, big wigs, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Champagne flutes clinking.
Oh, yeah.
You
Living the high life.
The whole thing, right?
Yeah.
But here's the interesting part.
Okay.
Year after year, they were getting feedback that people weren't really feeling it with the
Yeah.
networking and the social engagement. It was declining.
So they're all fancy, but they're not connecting.
Yeah, despite all this outward success and prestige, people weren't actually connecting on a deeper level.
So this is, a challenge that you see all the time in professional settings.
I guess so.
You can get all these amazing, accomplished people in a room,
Yeah.
but it doesn't mean that they're actually going to have these meaningful interactions.
Right. They're not really going to open up.
And so often, these environments can be kind of guarded.
Oh, yeah.
People stick to these polite,
Yeah.
but ultimately kind of superficial conversations.
Yeah, just kind of
Yeah,
how's
exactly.
the weather?
How about those, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So the organizers, they realized this, right? And they brought in this facilitator named John Petrus to kind of shake things up.
Oh, I like him already, Shaker.
Using this SGL method.
Okay.
So instead of just launching into another panel discussion or a, typical networking reception,
Yeah.
he starts his session with what they call an icebreaker.
Okay.
But this was not your average icebreaker.
Oh, really? What did he do?
He asks everyone in the room to close their eyes,
Close their eyes.
and just walk around until they bump into two people they've never talked to before.
Wow.
Can you imagine?
So you're blind.
You're blind, you're in this fancy room,
Yeah.
you're just bumping into people.
And these are all CEOs and stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Wow.
That's a bold move.
It's very disarming, right? It
Yeah.
totally disrupts that formal atmosphere.
Yeah, 'cause you're, like I said, you're a CEO. You're used to being in control.
Total control.
And now you're bumping into people.
You're vulnerable.
Yeah.
So then they all find each other, right?
Uh-huh.
They're bumping around in the dark,
Uh-huh.
and they sit down knee to knee.
Okay.
Ready for what's next?
Intimate.
Yeah.
All right, I like where this is going.
And this is where the real core of the SGL method comes in.
Okay.
John Petrus gives them this 3-part sharing task,
Okay.
and it goes through these languages that we talked about.
I see.
So first the blue, just a basic factual introduction.
Name, job, title.
Yeah, what do you do?
Okay, got it.
Then the red.
The red. Okay.
And this is what gets interesting.
Okay.
What truly gives you energy in your life, your passions.
Your passions.
And then finally, the yellow.
What your soul or your life cannot live without.
Ooh, that's deep.
Deep stuff.
Right.
So it's this really deliberate progression
Yeah.
from the surface to something much more profound.
From the blue to the yellow.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And the facilitator, he actually sets the stage for this
Okay.
by being the first one to
He
share.
goes first.
He goes first.
I like that it leads by example.
Yeah, because, if he's asking them to be vulnerable, he's got to be vulnerable too.
Exactly. You got to walk the walk.
So his blue introduction is kind of what you would expect.
Okay.
His age, his name, his education.
Uh-huh.
He went to the University University of Oslo for theology.
Interesting.
And he had this crazy work history.
Oh, wow.
He's been a journalist, an editor, a pastor, an author, a government fellow.
Now, that's impressive.
And he's done leadership development for both oil and high-tech industries.
This guy's done it all.
So it's like...
Renaissance man.
Yeah, he's establishing his background, but it's clearly not the whole picture.
Right, it's just the tip of the iceberg.
Exactly.
Okay.
So then he goes into the red.
Okay, the red. Here we go.
And this is where it gets really good.
All right.
He starts talking about love.
Love?
The importance of relationships in his life.
Uh-huh.
He talks about his personal experiences with divorce and remarriage.
Oh, wow.
His 4 children.
Okay.
The joy that he gets from creating things and this deep sense of fulfillment he gets from doing good for others.
Yeah.
You can just picture the atmosphere in the room shifting as he's sharing this stuff.
People are like, whoa.
Yeah, people are like leaning in.
Okay.
They're not just nodding politely anymore.
Right.
They're really listening.
They're connecting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
So by sharing this red, right, these passions and vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
he's moving way beyond just like a professional facade.
Exactly.
He's being a human being.
Yeah, he's a real person,
Yeah.
not just a suit.
And that allows other people to connect with him on a deeper level.
Right.
It's interesting that he chose to share about the divorce and the remarriage.
Yeah.
Do you think that level of vulnerability is always necessary for red sharing to be effective?
Yeah, I mean,
Or could it be something less personal?
I don't know. I think it depends on the person, right?
Yeah,
And what they're comfortable sharing.
right.
But I think the key is that it has to be something that's genuinely meaningful to them,
Yeah,
whatever that is.
right.
So for him, maybe those experiences were like,
Central.
yeah, central to like what gave him energy
Right.
and shaped his relationships.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
So then he goes into the yellow.
Ooh, the yellow.
The yellow.
Yeah, right.
And this, to me, feels like the most impactful part.
Okay.
He talks about gut feeling.
Gut feeling all right.
The power of silence and deep reflection.
Okay.
And a longing for something greater than himself.
Wow, that is deep.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a big concept.
Yeah, you don't hear that at a networking event very easily. This is pretty cool, though.
It is cool.
I like it.
So the yellow is really tapping into something universal.
Yeah, I think so.
These deeper human longings and values and beliefs that
Oh, yeah.
we don't often talk about,
Especially in a professional setting.
especially in a professional setting,
Yeah.
right?
You're not going to go up to like a CEO and be like, hey, man, what's your soul-searching journey been like?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I think that stuff is important.
It is important.
And it's what makes a human.
Totally.
So to really drive this home,
Yeah.
he draws this symbol on a flip dart,
Okay.
a double cross.
A double cross.
Yeah, and he explains that it represents both the version of himself that he shares with the world and then this deeper, more intuitive part of him
Okay.
that exists kind of between the lines.
So like the outer self and the inner self.
Exactly.
Interesting.
So it's like a visual reminder
Okay.
of how complex we are.
Right.
There's always more to a person
Yeah.
than what you see on the surface.
Then meets the eye, and the double cross is like a symbol of that.
Exactly.
I like that.
And it's something that people can remember.
Yeah.
You know, it's a good visual.
Yeah. And the results of this whole exercise were incredible.
Really?
His source says the room just came alive.
Wow.
All that polite and kind of rigid atmosphere just disappeared.
Okay.
And it turned into this buzz of like animated conversations, genuine laughter.
Okay.
People were sketching things together.
Really?
It was a total 180.
Wow. So they went from like
Yeah.
stiff and boring
It's just totally
to
condensed.
like best friends.
Yeah. It's amazing what vulnerability can do.
The power of vulnerability.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Makes you think about like all the times you've been in those situations.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Where, you know, you're at a meeting or a conference and you're just kind of like,
Making small talk.
yeah, making small talk.
Exchanging business cards.
Yeah. And you don't really connect with anybody.
Yeah.
This SGL method is like a whole different approach.
It's a game changer.
Yeah.
Totally.
So the source actually gives a practical takeaway
true.
for you, the listener.
Pretty.
It's called Home Lesson 1-2.
1-2. Okay.
And it basically mirrors that icebreaker activity.
Okay.
So it encourages you to prepare your own blue facts.
Like my resume.
Yeah, like your resume.
Okay.
Then think about your red activities and relationships that give you energy.
What I'm passionate about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then identify something yellow that's really important to you.
That core value.
That core value. It's like a mini self-assessment.
Yeah.
Really taking the time to think about these different levels of sharing.
Right. And they even suggest like trying it out
Yeah.
before your next meeting or conference.
Yeah. Be more intentional.
Yeah. Be intentional about how you connect.
And you could even try it with someone you already know well,
Oh, interesting.
like a partner.
Yeah.
Or a close friend.
Just to, like, deepen that connection.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So it's not just about preparing what you're going to say.
Right.
It's about reflecting on what really matters to you at these different levels.
The blue, the red, the yellow.
Right.
Cool.
Right. Now, it's interesting that the source also mentions AI.
AI, okay.
They talk about how AI is becoming more and more present in our lives.
It's true.
And they say that because of that, human connection and communication are going to become even more important.
Right, because the robots are taking over.
Yeah, basically.
We need to connect with each other.
We even use this prize.
What is it?
Debate. Debate, and love, love, love.
I like that.
So it's like this idea that as AI takes over more tasks, we need to focus even more on the things that make us human.
The things that robots can't do.
Yeah, exactly. And that's things like empathy and connection and building meaningful relationships. So methods like this SGL method that are all about fostering genuine connection.
Right.
They're becoming even more relevant.
So for sure.
In a world where, we're interacting with technology more and more.
Yeah.
So I think, to sum it all up, this
Okay.
deep dive into the SGL method and that example from the leadership conference in Norway, it really highlights this idea.
What's that?
That by going beyond just like the facts and sharing what really matters to us.
The red, the yellow.
The red and the yellow, we can actually create much stronger and more meaningful connections with other people.
Totally. And it makes you wonder, how could incorporating this red and yellow language into your own interactions change things?
Right.
What would happen if you stopped doing the small talk and
Yeah.
started sharing something real?
Something real.
Yeah, something from the heart.
I love it.
So think about that double cross symbol, right?
Yeah, that double cross.
What would your own double cross look like?
What would mine look like?
Yeah, what are those parts of yourself that you share with the world?
Right.
And what are those deeper parts that maybe you don't share as much?
That are just as important.
And, technology is going to keep advancing.
Yeah, not going.
AI is going to become more and more prevalent.
It's true.
But that fundamental human need for connection and understanding, that's not going anywhere.
No.
That's always going to be there.
That's what makes us human. Is
Exactly.
This SGL method gives us a way to tap into that in a really intentional and meaningful way.
Totally.
So we really encourage you to explore these ideas.
Yeah.
Think about how you can apply these SGL principles in your own life.
Give it a try.
Yeah, you could start with that home lesson 1, 2.
Yeah.
And see what happens when you move beyond the blue.
Beyond the blue.
And embrace the red and the yellow.
The red and the yellow.
Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.
It's been fun.
Yeah.
I love it.
Me too.
All right.
See ya.
Catch you later.